ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive.
Welcome into the Wednesday, January 25th edition. Your drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. We're here until 6 o'clock. We're going to get your text in this hour. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. That is our text line to be a part of the program this hour. And we've got something new we're doing. We're doing shout-outs now. This is a new feature on our app, and how you do this is you go to our Facebook page, and there's some instructions there today, or you can go to our website, wrvc.com, and you download our app. That's where you begin. You got to download our app. And then once you get it on your iPhone or your Android, you can go to the shout icons, like the shout-out icons, and you can send a shout-out. And if you follow me on Twitter at Paul Swann, there are going to be times where I'm going to ask you questions to send me shout-outs for. And you'll get a chance to be able to, you send those shout-outs. So you want to say something to me, you want to ask a question, you want to respond to something I've done on Twitter, you send that shout-out, and then it will make it on the show. So we're doing that today. You got to have the app, though. And you can listen to our podcast there. You can also stream the show live. If you're listening at 5 o'clock, you can listen to the radio station there as well. So you need our app, and all you have to do is go to our website for the link, or you can search the App Store on your phone right now for your Android or your iOS device, and just search ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Download our app, and then you can do the shout-out feature. It's pretty cool. So we asked you earlier today, sort of kind of get a feel for, how people are going to use this, as we posted it on Facebook. And so someone took us up on it to be the very first shout-out. So let's go and hear that shout-out and see what they had to say.
Hello, Paul. This is Christopher Crink from Pritchard, West Virginia, longtime listener to The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. With Alumni Weekend coming up on Saturday for Marshall men's basketball, I'm curious to hear, who is your favorite Marshall basketball alum?
Favorite Marshall basketball alum? That's interesting. Okay. We got to narrow this down because I don't know if I can just shoot it off here. I don't know if I can just go off the cuff because there have been some greats. As younger, it was John Taft. I think John was probably one of my favorite players. You have some outstanding names from the past, but this is my favorite. Okay, so I'm going to go with the 80s. I was a big Tom Curry fan, maybe. I don't know if I would go Tom Curry as my favorite, though. John Taft's always up there for me. And then we get into the 90s. We get into the current era. Let's see. I'm going to say favorite, Favorite. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, though, because, I'm a big Ott Elmore fan. I'm a big John Elmore fan, right? And Tamar Slay was fantastic. I loved him. And there's always room in my heart for Keith Veeney, J.R. Van Hoos, right? Some big names there. I'm a huge Rondell Watson fan. Whatever list comes up, my short list, Rondell Watson will be on it just because I love how he played. I'm going to go, if we're talking favorite right here, favorite, it's hard. Shaq Johnson. I want to say Shaq Johnson, only because I got to know him a lot better. You said alum, right? You said alum, so Tavion doesn't count yet. You didn't say current, you said alum. He was my favorite basketball alum. Well, I'm going to have to say Shaq Johnson, maybe, just because, one, Shaq ran this show for a while. He was an intern. Actually, he was an active participant, interning, running the show. So I might say Shaq Johnson. He's tough to beat. So who's your favorite? Do you have a favorite? And I know some of you are going to say John Elmore. You can ask yourself, is John Elmore my favorite, or is it someone else? The text line is 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. And if you send us a shout-out, you use our app, you send us a shout-out, tell me who you are, where you're shouting out from, and then hit me with your take. Now, again, it's brand new. We're getting it started. You can be one of the first to do it. We're going to do it for our post-game shows. We're going to do it for this show. So got to get the app, download it. WRVC.com is where you can get the links if you're going to go from the web page to the App Store. If you're going to do it straight from your phone, search on your App Store ESPN 94.1 and AM 930 and get the app. And then it's real simple. Go to that menu button, and then you'll see where you can do the shout out. Type your name, where you're from, so I can see it. And then when you do the shout out, tell me, hey, who you are, where you're hitting me from, and then hit me with your take. It's real simple. So we'll do more of that. We'll keep your text, though. We're going to keep doing that. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. So now that you've heard it, you know what it sounds like. You can do it as well, and we'll play them back on the show. When we continue, we'll take a look at what's happening. We got a busy week ahead of us here. We'll tell you what's going on, and later on, we'll hear a little bit from Tony Kemper. He is on the road. The Herd taking on ULM, both at home and the women on the road at ULM. And we will get his comments. And, of course, your texts are coming in, and we're going to do that when we continue as well. That's all coming up on this edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Our text line this hour, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Welcome back to The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Wednesday, the quiet day before all the action taking place. A lot of things to get into, and we're going to do that with you. And our text line is open again, 304-396-TALK. We also giving you opportunities to send us a shout out. That's a way for you to interact a little bit more with us. All you have to do is download our streaming app, and it's at WRVC.com if you want to go through that way to get it on the App Store or on your favorite device, either iOS or Android. All you have to do is go to the App Store, search WRVC AM or ESPN 94.1 and AM 930, and you can get the streaming app. And then you can send a shout-out, and we'll be asking you questions all the time and having you send in your shout-outs. And watch me on Twitter as well, at Paul Swann. So you got several ways you can be a part of the show throughout the day. Christopher writes in and says, my favorite men's basketball alum has always been DeAndre Kane. And, of course, a Go Herd. DeAndre Kane was a heck of a player. I'm still going to go with Shaq, maybe. I think Shaq Johnson's my guy. And that's only because I knew Shaq a little bit better, because I had a different relationship with him. It wasn't just someone I covered. If we're talking favorite all-time player, Shaq's right now, and we're qualifying this, alum. It's probably Shaq. It's a slew of guys in the 80s. I was always, as a kid, I was a big John Taft fan, and I was always a Skip Henderson fan as well. So, when Skip got into trouble, that really hit me as a young Herd fan, as a fan, because he got into some trouble, and that really wrecked his life. And he's hopefully one day going to get it back to where it's. I'll tell you this: it's something that I hope that one day I can have a conversation with him here in this studio. Because as a youngster, as a kid, he was one of my favorites. And you hate when your favorites, things happen to them, or they do things, or things terrible happen to them, either by no fault of their own or by their own hand. So I really hope one day that he can be in this studio and I can just have a conversation with him. That would be something. But I was always a fan of his, as a kid. And of course, I mentioned some other guys, Jared Van Hoos, fan of him. Tamar Slay, always a fan. Cornelius Jackson, I know. Coach Corney, he's always a fan favorite. Keith Veeney's a fan favorite. Texter wrote in and said DeAndre Kane, and sent a follow-up. I forgot Kane didn't finish his college career with Marshall. In that case, I'll say Demir Pitts. Okay, that's a good one right there. Demir Pitts. So do you have a favorite? And I know a few years ago it was John Elmore, but just because here are the reasons why. For many of you, it was John Elmore. One, NCAA tournament, win in the NCAA tournament, so that was big. Marshall got in and then won a game, and that was a moment for the program. And then CIT championship, he became the all-time leading scorer. He also pulled in a championship for Marshall. It was a CIT championship, but still it was a postseason tournament. And if you're in it, you're there to win it. In it to win it. That's where we're going with that. So I'm still going to stick with Shaq Johnson maybe if we're keeping this to alum, all-time favorite alum, since it's alumni night on Saturday. That's what started all this if you didn't join us, and that was from our shout-out earlier from the app. Alum, Shaq Johnson for me maybe. When Tamar Slay and J.R. Van Hoos are maybe on your short list and they're not the top guy, you know that you got a hard choice here. Or if John Elmore's on your short list and he's not your top guy, it's a hard list. How do you make that? How do you pick just number one? All-time favorite, not all-time best, all-time favorite. Who's your favorite basketball alum? And so when Tavion Kinsey becomes an alum, when he's done, do we all say it's Tavion Kinsey? So where do we put him? And we've got a few games at least to think about that. So that was the question. I'm going to roll with that. Who's your favorite all-time basketball alum? 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. I want to hear from some of our longtime Herd fans out there, the longtime Herd faithful. I want to hear from the old guys and gals. I want to hear from you. And do we keep this as just a men's basketball player? I'll entertain women's players as well. It's your favorite, not mine. I want to hear who's your favorite Marshall basketball player, alum of all time. Is it John Elmore? Is it Demir Pitts? Is it Shaq Johnson? Is it J.R. Van Hoos? Is it Tamar Slay? Is it Walt Wallowak? Is it Hal Greer? Is it Mike D'Antoni? Is it Dan D'Antoni? He's eligible, by the way. Who is it that is your favorite? If you could have the poster, one poster, your favorite Herd player, we're going to give you a poster of your favorite Herd player. Who is your favorite? Text line 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Mine's Shaq Johnson. I'm just going to say that right now. But again, I have a different friendship with Shaq, so I think I can't leave him off my list. I'm Facebook friends with Shaq Johnson. I can't put him off. I mean, sure, I'm Facebook friends with Elmore too, but Shaq, I can't say that. Rondell Watson's in the list though. Rondell's up there, and depending on how I feel that day, it might be Rondell Watson, just because I loved how he played. I mean, I looked at his final game. I said, "Man, I'm going to miss you," and he looked at me, "I'm going to miss you too." And he meant that. So it's got to be Shaq or it's going to be Rondell, one of the two. I don't know. Sorry, John. I mean, really, it's hard to pick between the Elmores as well. I mean, is it John or is it Ott as your favorite? Which one's your favorite, Ott or John? Seriously, which one do you love more, Ott Elmore or John Elmore? Which one are you most excited to see come TBT time? Ott Elmore, John Elmore? Talk about guys that are your favorites. That's a team right there. I'm gonna lean a little bit. The '80s guys are really something for me because that's when I was old enough to really be able to have it all register, and young enough that I could just still enjoy it as a kid. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. When we continue, we'll hear from Tony Kemper. Marshall taking on ULM on the road. We'll talk about that when we continue with this edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Welcome back to the Wednesday edition, The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Our text line this hour, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We've been talking about who your favorite Marshall basketball player is. It's alum. Because Alumni Night's coming up on Saturday. The Herd's going to be taking on Georgia State Saturday, and it's Alumni Night. And the question was asked earlier through our shout-out on our app, who my favorite basketball alum was of all time. And I'm going to have to say it's Shaq Johnson. You've got different names, and I love that. Let's go to the text line, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. And you can give me short answers. You can explain why this is your favorite player. But one text came in and said Markel Humphrey. So Markel Humphrey gets a vote. John Taft. Someone wrote in and said John Taft. I almost would go John Taft, but again, I like Shaq Johnson. And this is favorite. This isn't all-time greatest. This is favorite. And John was cool as a kid. Again, this is young Paul Swann growing up, becoming a Herd fan because it was Huck's Herd. That really is like Huck's Herd, and here are the players, and we get those schedule posters, and they'd have all the players' faces on them. Is the poster a big deal today? It was when I was a kid. I don't even have a current schedule poster for Marshall basketball. I didn't get one. But as a kid, oh man, I would be all over the place to get one of those. I'd have that schedule poster up in my room every year, and it was Huck's Herd, and John Taft was on one of them, and I love those schedule posters. And John Taft would probably be on my short list of favorite players just because he was fun to watch. He's one of the all-time greats. Arguably, you could argue that he is the all-time great. If he had a few more games under his belt, maybe he's the all-time scorer. I don't know. That's going to be Tavion Kinsey soon enough. Also from our text line, my favorite Marshall alum is James Kelly. All right, that's a good one, James Kelly. Here's another name, Tyler Wilkinson, coming up. Another name from the text line, Mark Patton. All right, the General. I could be down with the General being on this list. And again, this is your favorite Marshall player. This isn't mine. This isn't some popularity contest. It's your favorite player, and maybe why. Why is that your favorite player? But there's some good names on this list. And earlier from our text line, we got DeAndre Kane, we got Demir Pitts. No one said Elmore yet, so maybe you've got a little bit more diverse audience going today here, because I've had different names come up because it's very hard to compete against an Elmore. Ott, because you just love Ott. He's a legend himself. And then there's John Elmore. He was pretty good too. He's decent. I remember a few years ago we were talking about statues of John Elmore when Marshall won in the NCAA tournament, when Marshall won the conference championship. Marshall won the CIT. We were talking about statues to John Elmore here, so I haven't heard his name. Back to our text line, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Here's a personal favorite for a lot of us, and I think we found out how meaningful he was to a lot of fans. Bruce Morris, someone texting in. And, of course, the shot heard around the world. I got to talk to him about a year or so ago when he was actually in the building doing maintenance on our trees. We're in the building, the old 13 building, and we've got the trees that are inside our building. And so Bruce was cutting the trees, and we were looking. It's like, is that Bruce? Is that Bruce Morris? And so got to talk to him for a little bit, and a humble guy, super humble guy. He's not just sitting around. He's doing things with his life, and lawn care and trees and stuff like that. That's one of them. So yeah, you got to put Bruce Morris. I'm sure he's a lot of people's favorite. He found out how much we think of him when there was an outpouring of support to put his feet prints back just on the court. And now we have a contest where you're trying to make that shot every game. Nobody's going to make that shot. From our text line, there is Laverne Evans. Okay, it's a name we haven't heard in a while, Laverne Evans. So if you got a favorite player, you can text in 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. And it's alum. Since it's alumni weekend, alumni night on Saturday, who's your favorite alum? Because it'd be real easy for us all to say right now, hey, Tavion Kinsey's our favorite player, right? It's easy for us to say that. And maybe in a couple of years, we're all going to say, hey, no, it's Tavion Kinsey. He's our favorite. But who's your favorite, and why is that player your favorite? Was it something that they did on the court? Was it an interaction? Was it a memory? Why is that your favorite player? And it doesn't have to be the best player of all time. It's just your favorite player. Why is that your favorite player? And it's going to be special to you. And there's no wrong answer here. I mean, Laverne Evans on the list, as valid as Bruce Morris, as valid as John Taft, as valid as James Kelly, as valid as Markel Humphrey, or the General, Mark Patton. All of these guys, all valid. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255, our number to be a part of the program. While we are talking about that and getting more of your choices in, someone that is one of my favorite coaches is Tony Kemper. It's a hard list to make, but he's always high on the list. Tony Kemper. I was at his presser as Marshall's on the road getting ready for ULM and Arkansas State. And I asked Coach during his presser, what was the challenge this week as the Herd goes on the road and takes on a ULM team that is 6-13. They are 2-6 in Sun Belt play. And he had a lot of nice things to say about them.
I think they're just generally a tough team. You know, when you look at them, they're kind of at the first part of building a program. They've got a really good post player, Emma Merriweather, that I think it starts from there and it works its way out. They're a little bit unique in that I think it is hard. They have a lot of players that are averaging 8 to 10-ish. So it's a little bit, some teams you can say, if we can keep her from having a good game, you're going to play well. They have multiple people that can be that person. So that sometimes can be tricky from a preparation standpoint because you've got to be a little wiggly about, okay, they're doing this well now, and we've got to adjust to that and take it away. So, but they have multiple people that can score well. But I think it's going to be hard for us to score on them. They look physical. They look tough to me. And then they have the Merriweather kid who says 6'5", and she looks every bit of that when you watch her on film. So.
And that's something I asked Coach about. The size issue really hasn't been a thing for this Thundering Herd team. There have been teams that are already, come into the Henderson Center that have been much bigger and longer. And Coach agreed this isn't a team that's really super long, but he talked about the size matchup and what the Herd needs to do.
We aren't super long. I mean, that's true. And I don't think it's been a 40-minute problem. Size has been a problem in, I thought it was a problem in like an 8-minute stretch against Troy. But it was a problem in that 8-minute stretch. The other 32 minutes, it wasn't. So, but I think that comes down to our consistency. And so when we are at our top end mentally, physically, then size doesn't matter. But some of those lulls, it's cost us a little bit. So, but it's always good to have some length in there. And, shifting to us, it was good to have Mo Matthews back super active on Saturday. She was playing against one of the better post players in the league on Saturday, and it was hard in there for them to. I thought she was just really energetic. She moved really well. Thought she hustled well on the glass and stuff. And she's different than a lot of the post players we're playing. She's not. She's a little faster and longer, but it's hard for her sometimes to move these posts off the block. But I thought she did a great job on Saturday. So, we've got to counter it with effort and energy and physicality, and then it won't be a thing.
Energy, effort, physicality. That's the word from Tony Kemper on how Marshall can counter the size disadvantage the Herd faces at times. We will get more of your text in, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We've been asking the question, it's alumni night on Saturday. Marshall taking on Georgia State, the men, 7 o'clock tip. So it's alumni night. I was asked this question earlier on our shout-out, and you can send your shout-outs in using our app. Just download it from the App Store, or you can go to our website at WRVC.com to get the store link there. And then you can shoot us a shout-out. And one of our shout-outs earlier today asked who was my favorite Marshall alum basketball player. And, of course, it's going to be Shaq Johnson. I think it's going to be Shaq Johnson. It could be Rondell Watson. I mean, it's hard to go against John Elmore. It's hard to go against Tamar Slay. It's hard to go against J.R. Van Hoos. It's hard to go against John Taft. It's hard to go against a lot of those people. So I'm sure you have one or two, and we're asking you, who's your favorite? 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Final segment coming up here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
This is The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
It's our final segment for today's edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. We are getting your text in, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Here's what we've got going on. Listener used our shout-out earlier today to ask me who my favorite Marshall basketball alum was. since it's going to be alumni night on Saturday for Marshall basketball against Georgia State. So I have a hard time picking. I'm taking Shaq Johnson. I've got a reason for that. I work with Shaq. He did intern work with us at the radio station years ago, so I got to know him. Big fan of his anyway on the basketball court. I think he was a key reason why Marshall basketball was coming back, becoming respectable. And if I had him and a couple other players from maybe the modern era, he's not that old, but if I had a few more players, I could take on anybody and have him on my team. He's definitely a first or second teamer, depending on what you need out of him. And so he's my guy. You've got some selections as well, and we're taking your text, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. One texter writes in and says it can't pick just one, so you have the late Dave Smith from the 60s or Tyrone Phillips from the 80s. Not sure if Smith was from the 60s or 70s, but Tyrone Phillips from the 80s. Another texter writes in and says it's a tie with Rodney Holden. Oh, that's a good one. Rodney Holden and David Wade. All very good picks. 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. We got some interesting news to tell you today. First of all, and she's going to be on the show with us tomorrow. I'm actually working on booking the details now while I'm doing the show, texting back and forth here. But Marshall University softball pitcher Sydney Nestor, she's going to be honored at her high school, Carroll County High School in Hillsville, Virginia this weekend. She's going to be inducted into the school's Sports Hall of Fame class of 2023. I mean, she's just the 2022 Conference USA Pitcher of the Year, and she's also a state champion from 2015, 2016 Virginia Gatorade High School Player of the Year, had a high school record of 55-2, ERA of 0.59. Yeah, she did some stuff. She's doing stuff. So she's going to be with us tomorrow as we're going to be on the road at the Henderson Center for our show and then our pregame ahead of the network broadcast. So we're going to be there tomorrow. I've got her. She's going to come in about 5:30, 5:45. We'll get her in and talk to her. Also, John Mercer, Marshall's tennis coach, is going to swing by tomorrow because Marshall was on the road taking on Kentucky. Tennis team won 4-3. So good for the Thundering Herd. It's always fun to beat Kentucky. For a team that doesn't play Marshall in basketball and football, there's sure a lot of rivalries in other sports. There's sure a lot of rivalries here in other sports, and it's fun. And so the Herd on the tennis court gets the victory 4-3 over Kentucky. So John Mercer is going to swing by tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about the win and what you can expect for the Thundering Herd. Marshall at home against the University of Charleston on Friday at 11 a.m. and then Bellarmine at 4 p.m. So tennis action on Friday. We'll hear from John Mercer to talk about it tomorrow, as well as Sydney Nestor to talk about going into a Hall of Fame. So high school Hall of Fame, that's pretty cool. So as the old saying goes, you win a prize, you get to come on the show. So she won a prize. She gets to come on the show. And we're still taking your text, 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. And I want to remind you one more time, get you used to it, that we have a new feature on our app. It's called Shout Out. And if you don't have our app, that's where you got to go first. You have to get our app, and that's on your app store from iOS for Apple or for Android from Google Store. And all you have to do is install that, and then if you open the app, once you get it installed, you open the app, and of course, this is how you can listen to the radio station. We stream, and there's a menu bar on the left. So you click that, and it's going to have things like live stream. You can see podcasts there, Facebook, Twitter. You can set our app up and use it as an alarm clock. There's a sleep timer on it as well if you want to listen to our stream. So you've got some cool things there. And then there's a new feature. It's called Shout Out. And all you have to do is hit that Shout Out button. And then it's going to ask you to enter your name and location. So You enter your name, put your location, just tell us who you are, where you're shouting out from. And then you'll hit and it's real easy. There's a microphone icon. You hit that microphone icon, and it's going to start recording. And you can do your shout out. Get like 15 seconds. Real quick shout out. And then when you're done recording, you'll hit that stop. And then you'll see a garbage can. You can delete it. You can play it back to listen to it. Or there's a cloud icon with an arrow pointing up. And that's how you upload it. And then once you do that, I'll get it. It's really cool. It's a way for you to shout out where you're at, what part of the area are you from, and you can also send me a message. Now, there'll be times where I'm going to ask you specific things. Hey, what'd you think about the game? Something like that. We'll do this on our post games as well. We'll take your shout outs. That's going to be cool. And also, if you listen to the show, say on the podcast, you listen to our show and you're not listening to it live, but you want to participate, go to our app, send us a shout out, and you'll hear it on the next show. So that's real cool. So you got to get our app, though, and it's free. You don't have to pay for it, nothing like that. Just go to your app store, download the app, search for ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Or, you could be fancy and search Fifth Avenue Broadcasting. That's the parent company, and you can download all our station apps. So if, for example, if you are listening to the post game, I'm probably going to have you use the dog app to send us shout outs because we're always going to be on the dog. So you might want to have that app handy as well. But for our show, for things that I do, go ahead and get the app, download it. That way you can listen. If you want to listen to the podcast, they go to the app. It's all in one easy place. You want to listen to the game, you can listen to it on the app. You can listen to the stream on the app. You can send me a shout out. It's really cool. I hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to use it a lot, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And, of course, we still got our text line. That's always going to be open for you, and we'll take those texts at 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. We will do this again tomorrow. We got Marshall basketball coming up tomorrow as well. I'm looking forward to all of that, and we'll do it here again in, less than a day on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
WRBC Huntington, W227BS Huntington, your flagship home of the Marshall Thundering Herd and The Drive with Paul Swann, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.